Welcome to session 2 of Manage Personal Stresses in the Work Environment. This is session 2 of 3, one more next week. We're going to cover some stress management skills, tips, strategies, and we will cover a little bit about psychosocial hazards. So when you have a look at the email later on or your course material with tonight's slides, you will see just a new slide that says psychosocial hazards. So I've just added in a little bit of information, not in the slides, but I'll speak to it. So I just thought it was relevant to talk about at some point. And I think we had just a little bit of time to play with in tonight's class. So I've added in that there and a little activity, but we'll see how we go with people in the class, how we can do that activity. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm meeting on and where everyone is meeting on as well. Where I am is the land of the Dharawal people, and I'd like to acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and welcome Aboriginal colleagues joining us. Sefa, I think, well, that's the screen name I have there. If you're joining in for class, are you able to pop your camera on? It's just helpful so I know people are around. Wonderful, thank you. Now, if at any point anyone needs to take a break, get a cuppa, move away for a moment, you absolutely can. If something's a bit funny for you, you're feeling a bit ick from something that we talk about, just let me know that you're okay and what you're doing to look out for yourself. And hopefully you'll come back to class. And if you don't, that's okay. Just let me know what you're doing to look out for you. And then I'll catch you when I catch you. Okay, so some strategies for managing stress. We talked last week about what stress is and that stress can be good and stress can be unhelpful as well. So whatever techniques that you put in place for you should be for you. Now we can talk about general things and things that are relevant across the board and for the most part helpful, but they may not be relevant to you at all or all of the time. So I want you to think about what we talk about. Is it relevant? Is it helpful? And can you put it into practice? If you can't, that's okay. It needs to be real for you. I don't want you to say, yes, I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep every night when you know you don't get home from work till midnight and you have to be up at 6 a.m. for work again. I'm not very good at maths, but that's not 8 hours of sleep possible in that time. So think about what's relevant and real for you. If 6 or 7 hours of sleep is real and what you can manage and stay healthy and take care of yourself, wonderful. So don't think that you're forced into whatever we talk about or whatever you research, whatever you read on the internet. In my other work, I get lots of emails about managing self and managing well-being. And so many times it's sleeping, eating well, having a good social engagement, having good rest and so on. And I fully agree with these principles. However, I do not sleep out 8 hours a night. If I was to get 8 hours of sleep a night, I think I'd be zonked out the next day because I wouldn't know what to do with myself with all of that rest. So I take things with a grain of salt, what's relevant for me. But some of these might be helpful for you. Debriefing with peers and your line manager. So I talk about reflective practice for you and reflective practice in the group setting in your workplace. I always talk about when in doubt, speak to your manager, get some guidance, bounce off ideas. Hey, I'm just thinking about, can I sound it out? Your manager might say, yep, wonderful, go ahead. Or, yep, didn't need me. Or, you know, what about changing this or that or whatever the case is. Relaxation methods. This is very broad. This could be practicing yoga. And now I could talk for days on the practice of yoga. Not that I'm a yoga teacher, I'm just really interested in it. And yoga is not just about physical movements, but it's about being in your body and so on. Maybe yoga is a relaxing method tool for you. Maybe binge watching, I don't know what's on at the moment, Bridgerton. Maybe that's relaxing for you. Maybe taking a bath, maybe going for a walk, spending time with family, spending time with pets, sitting in the park, sitting by the beach. Maybe these are relaxing methods for you. Wonderful. Put them in your management plan. And think about what is possible. So when I work with clients and we talk about goals and we talk about how the environment can help us, and if I'm working with a client that might live quite west of the coast, let's say an hour plus, and they say, I want to go to the beach every day. And you go, well, it takes an hour driving to get there, 2 hours on public transport. How are you going to manage that? And you start to think, oh, okay, maybe that's not possible. I don't want to throw it out. I want to see if we can work out something. Maybe once a fortnight, once a month is doable. But what else? I've known clients to have videos of the beach on their screen, on their phone, their computer, their TV. And then they think about relaxing and they think about taking care of themselves. Maybe specific training. You can do a lot of research yourself. You can go to some formal training. Now, these are not necessarily qualifications. They could be a 1-hour workshop. They could be a 1-day workshop. Maybe there's something in that space around learning relaxation tools or learning deep breathing. Maybe that's helpful for you. Stretching and exercises. So there's different, I guess, baselines that the World Health Organization puts out in terms of minimum hours or minutes of exercise per week. I couldn't tell you what it is exactly. I know it's at least a couple of days of intense exercise and a couple of days of, easier, moderate exercise. Now, what that means for you could be very different. Maybe it's 7 days of yoga. Maybe it's 2 days of lifting weights and 2 days of running. I'm not going to tell you what's helpful for you in the exercise realm. You need to think about what's good for your body and what you can do in terms of your ability, any injuries, any illnesses, tired, and also what do you have access to. If you like going to the gym, but the gym's an hour away, well, maybe that's a weekend activity only because you work during the week, for example. And taking breaks. This is your lunch break. This is a morning tea, afternoon tea break. Now, I don't want to get myself in a pickle and say, oh, well, my teacher, Christina, said I should take 3 breaks a day, and then your boss is unhappy with me. Please work to what your organizational standards are. You must take a break. Safe work guidelines instruct businesses to make sure their employees take a break. If you're not getting a break, I would look at why. Now, I've spoken about this before in terms of there are times when I've eaten my lunch in the car driving to the next appointment. There are times I've eaten my lunch at my desk writing case notes. There are times I've eaten lunch at my desk listening to a webinar to learn something. I don't make it a habit. I try to take my lunch away from my desk most days. I try to take my lunch outside or be outside at some point in the day, unless it's raining. But sometimes our work just gets a little busy. And if you don't take a lunch break, I want to say to you, try and minimize that, but also work out how you might take that half an hour or hour back in your day, because, that's an unpaid break. And also where you can have little breaks. Maybe you can take 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes somewhere else. Yeah, sometimes I'd spend a lot of time with clients outside walking, and whilst I'm working, I'm also enjoying being outdoors and getting a little bit of movement and exercise. So for me, if I didn't get time to myself that day, I was okay because I was still getting something that was relaxing and helpful for me. But I encourage you to take your lunch breaks as much as possible away from work. You might be with your colleagues. Great. You might have a social element to it. You might want to try and not talk about work during that time. Wonderful. If you're not at work and you're at home and you're studying, take your breaks there. I recommend not sitting down for more than 40 minutes or not being at your computer for more than 40 minutes when you're studying. You can have a look at lots of research in terms of how long I should be studying for and how long the brain needs to process things and how long is too long. My broad recommendation is if you're at home studying for the day, for the evening, try not to sit or stand for more than 40 minutes, walk away, do something else, 5-10 minutes. I am a terrible procrastinator. I will do anything and everything to avoid doing my assessments if I'm not enjoying the assessments or I don't understand or I just haven't thought about it properly. So I'm the person that works well under pressure the couple of days before something's due. Usually I have things written by then, but to get it done. Or I'm motivated by, I want to go out on the weekend, so I need to do my assignment before the weekend kind of thing. But making sure you're taking time away from your computer, and if you're watching TV for 5 hours, take a break from watching TV as well throughout that. There should be training, education for you in the workplace. It might be webinars. It might be some funding to do some training through an external provider. It might be a wellness program that your organization has in place. But there will be something. There should be something. If there's not, I would be asking about that at interview stage. What is the organization's take on wellness and well-being, and how do staff support each other and how to manage and support staff? I'd be asking that at the interview, or at least very early on. Some training might be in mental health first aid. This does not make you a practitioner. This doesn't make you a psychologist, doesn't make you a counselor. If you think about first aid, the traditional sense of someone has an acute injury and you can put a bandage on it, you can check that they're breathing, you can assist the situation, so getting people to assist. Mental health first aid is much the same. Someone's expressing, or you end up discussing something that's quite sensitive. Someone is acutely unwell, someone is expressing suicidal thoughts or ideations, and you're wanting to keep that person safe then and there. So I recommend doing that course. A lot of workplaces will pay for that. If you end up paying for it yourself, it's not the worst thing in the world. Put it on your tax. But I would look at, some training around that to help you in the workplace. Managers should be supporting you to identify signs of work stress. And this is why I've sort of added a bit of information on psychosocial hazards soon, because Safe Work New South Wales have kind of identified some common hazards, and I'm going to get you to have a look at them soon. Encourage a culture of open communication, increase flexibility in the workplace, be clear about communication policies. These are very manager-led. It doesn't mean you as an employee do not have responsibilities in this as well. You're responsible for your own well-being. You're responsible for your own health. Your manager and the organization should be encouraging and providing a safe space for you mentally, physically, emotionally, but you have control of your own health. So if you are not getting enough sleep, is it to do with work? Is it not? If you've been asked to work lots of overtime hours, but you have to care for you. So make sure you do, and you care for your employee, your staff, your colleagues as well. You don't need to ensure that they're following their own stress management plan, but if you see someone looking unwell, it doesn't take much to check in and say, are you going okay? I'm seeing this, this, and this. So I want you to think about now, we're just going to stay in here. You can turn your camera off if you like. But I want you to think about one source of stress in your life. This could be work, this could be family, this could be home life, this could be financial, this could be physical health. One source of stress in your personal or professional life. And I want you to think about, can you avoid it? And what does that mean? Or can you alter it, change it? And what does that mean? And can you remove it? And what does that mean? So if you're looking at avoiding something, you're putting it off, you're not dealing with it, what might be the consequences of that? Good, not good. If you're altering it, you're changing how you see something, or you're changing your interaction with something, or you're changing your work hours, for example, what are the consequences of that? And if you're removing it, well, what does that look like? Does that mean quitting a job? Does that mean not engaging with family members? If we're looking at finances, does that mean cutting down on certain types of spending? Whenever we have a problem, it can be easy to think about dealing with it in 3 ways: avoiding it, delaying it, or distracting from it. The best case is to deal with it or remove it where that's possible, but sometimes we avoid, delay, distract. And that might be helpful in the moment, that might be helpful in the short term. Maybe the problem will go away on its own. Wonderful. But I want you to think about one stressor, and if you were to avoid it, change it, remove it, what would that be like? Now, I won't ask you to share in the group space. This is just for you. So I'm going to give you 7 minutes to work on that. So are there any questions about that? So in terms of managing time, only you have control of that. You will have all kinds of demands. I'm sure you already have demands in your life. You have all kinds of demands working with clients in the workplace, in this kind of work. So I encourage you to think about, if you haven't already got it sorted in your life, to think about how you can best manage your time. Sometimes you have to do things at certain times. You have to see a client at 10 o'clock because that's what you've agreed on. You have to attend class at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You have to do a lot of things at a time that's out of your control. But you can manage your time around that. And I encourage you to think about this really well, because if you don't manage your time, you'll find your work getting overwhelming, your studies getting overwhelming, not committing to your own well-being, not committing to your social time, and that will have an effect on your health and your well-being and your ability to perform in the workplace and your ability to perform in your studies and so on. So think about, if you haven't got it sorted yet, and it's not like it's sorted for life. Life changes, things change, you get different responsibilities, but how can you manage your time best to work with what you have and what you have to do? Nope. So you might like to think about grouping tasks, looking at what's urgent right now. Lots of people will tell you, I need this yesterday, I need this tomorrow, I need this in 1 hour. Sometimes that might be correct. Sometimes you might be able to ask for more time, and you should ask for more time because everyone wants all their stuff now. That's just life. But maybe everyone doesn't need all their stuff right now. So think about what's urgent, what can I do now, what resources do I have, and how can I get this done on time, or ask for help, or ask for an extension, or both of those things. You might like to think about managing time in this fun way: delete, do, delegate, defer. Your deleting is getting rid of, unwanted emails, unwanted tasks, tasks that aren't your job, tasks that you're not qualified for, tasks that someone else can do. That also falls into your delegate as well. Maybe something can be done by someone else. It doesn't necessarily need to be someone lower than you in terms of hierarchy. It could be, and maybe not. The wonderful thing when you have a workplace where you and your colleagues get along and work well together is that you can ask for help. And where someone might help you today, you might help someone next week, and so on. Maybe you can put something off, do it later. It still needs to be done, but not right now. Or maybe you do it now. Sometimes the small tasks are easier done just now. They seem to take more time later. I don't know what it is, some weird universe thing, but doing the small task now can be really beneficial for you. So I highlighted that we will talk about psychosocial hazards, and we are going to go into an activity in groups, pairs. I'll see what the numbers are. But psychosocial hazards is a relatively new term. Not that it hasn't been around for a long time. The concept of psychosocial has been around for a long time. We've talked about it in terms of how we look at the health model, and psychosocial looks at the brain, the body, and the social environment. That's what we look at, and that's a really great approach to addressing, considering, assisting in health and well-being, and helping people stay well and recover from illness. A couple of years ago, particularly after the COVID-19 pandemic or throughout it, a lot of research came to light around burnout and around things in the workplace that are contributing to burnout. And so psychosocial hazards are aspects of work and management that can increase the risk of stress and result in harm to workers. And harm is a very broad term. These hazards may affect mental health, leading to psychological issues, or physical health, causing injury and illness. There is a lot of research and connection between physical illnesses and psychological mental illnesses. So if someone has a physical illness, injury, there's a lot that can be said and done around a person's mental well-being as well, and how that needs to be supported. Psychosocial hazards arise from poor work relationships, high job demands, and low levels of support and control. Just a couple of examples. Understanding and managing these risks is essential for maintaining a healthy and productive workplace. So how do psychosocial hazards cause harm? Well, they pose challenges to your employee well-being. Stress from these risks can lead to psychological issues such as anxiety, depression, as well as physical problems like muscle injuries and chronic conditions. When multiple stresses like high workload and poor support happen simultaneously, so at the same time, they can worsen their impact on an employee's health. So again, a lot of this is the managers, the organization's responsibility to ensure we have safe workplaces. But you as an employee, as a staff member, have a responsibility to care for yourself, to ensure you get support that you need in the workplace, outside the workplace. And you speak up when you see hazards. Just like when you see a puddle of water on the floor and you say, hey, there's a wet floor, let's put a sign up, let's mop it up, let's get some education on, I don't know, not carrying buckets of water through the corridor, whatever it is. The same principle applies to psychosocial hazards. So all of these things that are to do with our mind and our social environment, we need to point out hazards there as well. So, oh no, Belinda, that's horrible. Are you feeling okay? As well as possible? No, you feel terrible. All right, I appreciate you coming to class. Look after yourself. would you like to not be in a group? No group.
No, that's okay. I don't mind being in a group.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. You're a champ. Look after you and let me know if you need to jump off and do anything.
All good.
Okay, so your activity is going to be researching psychosocial hazards. So if you were to go to Safe Work New South Wales, or if you were to just Google Safe Work New South Wales psychosocial hazards at work, you will find them. Now, Safe Work New South Wales have put out 16 psychosocial hazards. I would like you to find them, and I would like you to write down what they are and what they mean. So we'll have a group of 2 and a group of 3. I want you to find those 16 hazards. If you've gone to Safe Work New South Wales, you will find them very easily. And I want you to write down what they are and what they mean. And then I'll ask you guys to present back to everyone. And, you know, the first group to go first will talk about whichever ones, and then I'll ask the other group to talk about other ones. So let me just make some breakout rooms now. I realize I made you do research on Safe Work New South Wales. Some of you live in New South Wales, some of you do not. Obviously, I do. If you were to look at psychosocial hazards for Safe Work Australia, I think they have 12, but you will find the categories or the wording or the information very similar. So, and if you Google Safe Work Western Australia, Safe Work Victoria, and so on, you'll find very similar psychosocial hazards there. So I'll hand over to you guys. Would you like to share what you found or parts of what you found? Doesn't have to be everything.
I'll go first then.
All right. Thanks, Belinda.
Okay. The first one that, I think we found a really good list. The first one is role overload. So high workloads or job demand, too much to do in a set time, or insufficient workers or other resources.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unachievable task deadlines, unpredictable shifts or hours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a whole long list of things that sort of are very similar to that. Tasks and decisions that are safety critical that may have a serious impact. Okay, the next one was role underload.
Mm.
So low workloads or job demands.
Mm-hmm.
Tasks or jobs where there is routinely too little to do. Highly repetitive or monotonous work. Production lines, that sort of thing. Shall I do another one, or do other people want to jump in?
How about we hand over to the other group? Thanks, Belinda.
Yeah.
Before you guys jump in, I wanted to highlight that low job demand. So it's really interesting. It hasn't been formally recognized that not having enough work to do is actually not so good for your mental health and well-being. Now, for the first 5 minutes, you're like, woohoo, I can just kick back and scroll through Facebook or something. But after days and days and weeks and months, it doesn't lead to a healthy person. Olivia, over to you.
I think we were on the same list, Belinda, the New South Wales one. So it came across the exact same thing. Like, what's one I could say? Like not having support from your co-workers, like it might be really poor or not helpful. They might not even be very nice. There could be violence in the workplace, or like, I guess that could come under a lot of things like bullying. There might be harassment. Or they're their own things, but kind of like, not nice things happening in the workplace, and it might be hard to handle it or open up about it, to someone about it. And one more I do, remote or isolated work, limited access to jobs, that kind of thing, and like not being able to connect with others in the same work, because there might not be many people at your work. And like it might be difficult to try and communicate to the headquarters or have things done for your local branch because they might just get left behind kind of thing.
Brilliant. Thank you. One that I'm sure is on your list, but I'll highlight is vicarious trauma or being witness to sensitive material, whether hearing, seeing, involved in. So vicarious trauma, again, is not a new term itself, and it's often been associated with PTSD. So seeing, witnessing something, but it's come to light again, more so over the last couple of years, or maybe the last 5-ish years, I would say, irrespective of the pandemic, where people are realizing that some people are in unique roles where they can be affected by things that they see, hear, a part of. So these are your first responders. These are your military personnel. These are people who work in a courthouse and listen to cases and be part of cases, whether they are legal staff, whether they are a witness, whether they are other judicial members of the courthouse. But that's a really, I mean, they're all important, but that's a really interesting one that hasn't had a lot of face value until recently, where we're actually realizing that bearing witness to sensitive things, to traumatic things, to on one end of the spectrum, bombs going off, to the other end of the spectrum, hearing a child talk about a negative experience in a courtroom. And that can actually bring up lots of things for a person. A person does not need to have had the same experience. They do not need to have had any adverse negative experience in their life. But what comes to mind is people can experience compassion fatigue and burnout on that level, where they're hearing and witnessing these things repeatedly, or once, but usually repeatedly. And they're quite exhausted physically, mentally, they're quite upset. They might be hypervigilant, where they're kind of always on alert and always ready to see things and hear things. They might have distrust in a particular population group or a service. They might be fearful of certain people or situations. And so this is a real thing, and it wasn't recognized as a real thing for a very long time. How can you possibly be sad because you heard a story? But human beings are human beings, and they have feelings, and they generally come from a place of I'm empathetic and compassionate, and that's a horrible story, and it doesn't sit well with me. And people connect it to something. So if someone had children of their own and they heard a story from a child, sometimes they would think about, how would this impact my children? How would I feel if this was impacting my children? And so on. And so people make connections, which is quite common when someone's suffering from vicarious trauma or compassion fatigue. But compassion fatigue is not just hearing or witnessing. That could be a psychologist that's gone 10 years and just hasn't had a break and is just overloaded with helping people. So think about that for yourself and for your colleagues, because you will hear stories from clients. You will potentially see someone using AOD. You will potentially see the negative effects of using AOD, and that can be really traumatic, really hard to see. You'll go into action mode probably of, what do I do? How do I help? And then you'll think about it later and you go, oh, that was heavy. And so you need to take care of yourself. So whether that's talking to someone, a colleague, a friend, a manager, talking to someone professionally, highly recommend. There'll be slides later on that talk about journaling. We've spoken about exercise, we've spoken about lots of things. But I want you to be wary of that is a potential in your line of work where that might be an experience for you. I don't want you to be on the lookout. I want you to keep yourself safe and be aware of your surroundings, but I don't want you to be looking for what could be really upsetting today, because you will find it. That's just how the mind works. But just be aware that that is a possibility in your line of work. Okay, let's take a break. So for those catching up later, we've had a break and we've watched the little 1 minute video on tips to reduce stress. When we're stressed, the first part in that video talked about chemicals and reducing, increasing, and things like that. When we're stressed and our body's thinking about that fight, flight, freeze, and we're thinking about deadlines and being overwhelmed and stressed and all of these things, our body releases cortisol. This is the stress hormone, if you like. And this is this surge of adrenaline, and adrenaline is a different chemical, but this feeling. But cortisol actually reduces our ability to concentrate. It reduces our reaction time, reduces our senses, and it makes it a lot harder to recover afterwards. And when I say recover, I mean we'll feel quite tired, we'll feel quite drained, quite sad maybe. And so that's what cortisol does, and it goes away. And then when we're stressed again, it comes back, and so on. Dopamine is one chemical that is a happy chemical, happy drug. This is released when we're doing things that make us happy. When we're dancing, when we're enjoying company with people, when we're eating good food, when we're being in nature, when we're listening to music, and we're happy and we're enjoying it, dopamine gets released. And this is the feel good. This makes us feel good. We want to do more things that feel good. Not everything feels good in life, and sometimes it is what it is. Not every day we love work. Not every day we love picking up the kids and taking them here and there. And not every day we love housework and all of those things. Sometimes we just do things, and that's okay. But we want to try and increase our time being happy. Managing stress at work. We want to think about our internal and our external options or resources or sources of help, being people, being information, being webinars, lots of things. Most organizations, I don't think I can think of any, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think all organizations in today's time have an employee assistance program. Usually this involves a counseling service. Sometimes it can involve resources. Sometimes it can involve training, webinars. But I would like to hope all organizations in Australia have an EAP service. Your organization will have set out how many hours, how many sessions, how many something you can have for free. And then you might have to pay after that, or you might have access to more. It depends on what the issue is, your organization, the policies around that. So that might be a resource for you. You don't have to, and you should not be in dire straits, dragging yourself along the floor to go to work before you ask for help. If you're there, then it's too late. It's not impossible. You ask for help then, but you've let it go on a little bit too long. The most common way of thinking about this is putting petrol in the car or charging your phone battery. If the car is out of fuel, it will stop. If your phone is out of battery, it will stop. Don't stop. Don't let your lack of awareness and support for yourself stop for yourself, because then you have a greater chance, if not already, of becoming unwell physically, mentally. You can't think properly. You can't care for other people properly. You can't care for yourself properly. You're tired, you're anxious, you're angry, you're hungry, you're not hungry, you're sleeping, you're not sleeping. It's already quite severe for you, for anybody. So don't let it get to empty. Do those things in your management plan every day, every other day, whatever it is. Don't let it go. It doesn't take more than 5 minutes to take some deep breaths, to listen to the music that you like, to listen to a podcast, to meditate, to journal. If you just give 5 minutes a day, beautiful. If you give 50 minutes a day, amazing. Don't let it get to empty. Reach out to your colleagues, reach out to your supervisor. Human resources are there to help you with information, with understanding your responsibilities at work, with understanding policies and guidelines. They can also help you if you're experiencing something negative at work. If you're experiencing any of those psychosocial hazards, you might like to give HR a call, an email, and say, hey, something's going on. Can I talk to someone about it? Those conversations, those emails are confidential. The HR team will probably be aware of things. That's what teams do, but it doesn't go outside of that. So your manager should not be told that you've spoken to HR for whatever reason. If it's something you can tell your manager, if they're not the person that you're calling HR about, wonderful, do that. Adjustments to your work environment could be hybrid working, could be remote working, could be reduced hours, could be working longer hours over a couple of days to have a day off. It could be adjustments to your workstation at home, at work. Sit, stand, desk, different chairs, different footstools, pedestals, different screens, different lighting. If you need to take more breaks, if you need to have headphones on because there's too much chatter in the office, if you need to work in a quieter space because there's too much chatter in the office, ask for these things or do these things for yourself, particularly in your home environment. You will have to look after that. You can get sit stand desks pretty cheap. The one I'm working on, I'm sitting at the moment. I put it together with some help from my family, but I think the whole thing cost me $250. And it's solid and it's a push of a button and I can set 4 levels and it's wonderful. So there are cheaper, there are a lot more expensive. I'm quite happy with this, but if that's a thing for you that will help, invest in that for yourself. Now, it doesn't mean you stand all day, every day, because that's not healthy either. But you can do a lot of research in terms of how long should I sit and stand. Your friends, your family are there for you. Some of you might be thinking, I don't want to burden them. Okay. If they weren't your friends and family, would they not care for you? And if you can't, let's say, burden them, then who can you? I'm not saying dump everything on someone all day, every day and walk away. Sometimes venting is very helpful. I recommend you go to a psychologist for that. I recommend you get a pet or you get someone else's pet and you vent. I ask you to be kind to other people when you're venting. That can be very helpful. And they might say, vent away. And you might do that in 20 minutes and you go, you know what, I feel better. Okay. Please don't do that time and time and time again because they're not going to be too happy or well and so on. And sometimes you need some sounding board back, or you need to talk through things, or you need to work through suggestions, or you need some advice. Now, if I go back to advice giving and changing behavior, no one can make you or tell you. So I'm not asking you to go to friends and family and expect them to change you. If you want change, if you realize change is necessary for you, wonderful. Get some help with that. But if you're at a point where things are quite upsetting, making you angry, making you tired, making you stressed, I recommend that you speak to a psychologist, at a minimum, a mental health counselor, just to have that space to talk openly and freely without burdening anyone, because they're paid to be there and they should have their own self-care so they avoid burnout and compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. So I recommend that as a really good thing. It depends what state you're in and how close you are to a service. A lot of services are done via Zoom or MS Teams these days, a phone call. A lot of them are, I don't like to use the word expensive because I don't think you can put a price on mental health care, but I appreciate, and at times I've recognized this for myself as well, when it's a lot of money to pay right now, but I never discount its importance. So look around for someone nearby, accessible, within a price range that's affordable for you. When in doubt, use the EAP service. You don't need to tell anyone at work that you're using EAP. That might be helpful for you. If you need the chat at 9 p.m. and no one's around, call Lifeline. I think Lifeline has an entity where you can text. If it's not like Lifeline, there is an organization where you can text as well. And this is really helpful for teenagers who maybe don't like talking, maybe don't know how to get the words out, maybe are scared and so on. And teenagers just text to communicate anyway. Most people text to communicate these days anyway. So have a look at, just Google texting support line, for example. But you can call Lifeline. You can have a chat to someone. They're trained volunteers in responding to calls, responding to crisis, responding and listening to people who are experiencing something in their life. They will listen, they will offer some guidance within their realm, and they will offer recommendations to services. They won't refer, but they can offer, information or a type of service that they think might be helpful for you. And you go and research, you go and find out from there. Your personal stress management plan. We looked at it last week. Hopefully you wrote something down last week. If you haven't, do it. And put it somewhere that you have access to all of the time. You can scrapbook, not a problem. You can have a wall full of Post-it notes, not a problem. You can have it in a little notebook tucked away in a desk drawer, not a problem. Doesn't matter what it looks like, as long as it's your plan. The things in there that you can do. I spoke earlier around don't get 8 hours of sleep if that's really not possible for you for whatever reason, or your body just doesn't sleep like that. Or maybe you're going to work towards that, but you need to reduce or change or cut some things in the meantime. Great. Right? What's relevant for you, what you can do, what you have access to, whether that be financially, geographically, in your location. It's really important that you have this for yourself. This also forms part of one of your assessments for this subject. So if you've done it already, amazing. If you haven't done it, might like to do it soon. These are things, again, that could be helpful for you. Don't put it in if it's not helpful for you. And if you've got, for example, meeting with colleagues, maybe you might like to tell your colleagues who you want to meet with that, hey, I've got a personal stress management plan and you're part of it. Are you okay about that? Are you okay if we meet once a week, once a fortnight, once a month, just to chat about anything? Or we have a debriefing session once a week about all the work. Is that okay? Fill them in. It might be part of their stress management plan too. They might really appreciate that someone said, oh, you know what? I have been wanting to talk about things, so this is a great idea. Work-life balance is a little bit like a unicorn, yeah? We want it. It's out there somewhere. We get it sometimes, and sometimes we don't. And we're trying to achieve it. We're trying to get it. I want you to work hard at achieving this. Again, sometimes the balance swings to work. Sometimes the balance swings to life. Okay, that's balance. That's how seesaws work. Just don't stick it all up in work, and that's where you're at for a week, for a month, for a year. Don't let it get to empty. See the signs early on. These are things, again, you can do. I used to, when I started out studying and working full time, I used to have a calendar kind of like what you see on the screen. And I would literally break down the hours of the day, all from wake up to exercise, to coffee, to food, to uni works at this time, socials at this time and this day. And I just worked to that. It was messy. It wasn't easy. I didn't get it right or perfect or did it well. And I threw it out many a times, but it was really helpful for me once I kept working at it. And then that way, something that I should bring back, because I mentioned that I'm quite a procrastinator at this point. But that way, you know that you're committing. If I have to do 8 hours of work a week, of study a week, then work it out. Is that every day for 1 hour and then Sunday has 2 hours? Is that, I don't know, 2 days a week at 4 hours each, whatever works for you. Maybe it can't be that solid because you've got lots of things going on. That's okay. You need to manage your time and you need to look at what can I do with the time that I have. And if at any point there's just too many things that you're trying to do in a day, in a week, then I encourage you to think about what can you drop. Probably the first answer to that is to drop study. Now, I don't encourage you to leave at all, but sometimes you can't drop work. Sometimes you can't drop what you do with the kids. Sometimes you can't drop what you do in the house. Sometimes you can't drop caring responsibilities. And so study sometimes might be the one that you can cut. And you say, no, I don't want to. I'm making progress. I want to get through it. I want to do work. I want. Great. Wonderful. You can only get there if you're well. So if you need to drop studies for a couple of weeks, and that's going to help you balance things out. Wonderful. And then you have time to think about studies coming back soon. How am I going to manage it again? Think about your priorities. This has been a shift for me personally. I've started in my full-time job in September last year, and I had some hard truths and some hard lessons to work through in starting this job, because the job I was in before, whilst it had a whole lot of work demands and things that, you know, maybe on that list of psychosocial hazards, I loved the work and I loved the team, but I was putting a lot of myself into the job, and work became my identity for a long time. And you want to do some soul searching at some point in your life, and many times in your life, around what's my identity and identities, because there's not just one. But I had wrapped up work as my main identity. And if I wasn't doing a good job there, well, then I wasn't succeeding in life, which is not a healthy approach. And I don't recommend that for anyone. But in taking on my now full-time job, I really thought about how can I get my balance back, because I want to study. I want to enjoy my work. I want to enjoy my social time. How do I make that happen? And that's leaving work at work. That's not working excessive hours. That's recognizing when I need a break and I need that sleep in or lay in, or I need to do that workout today because I've missed a couple of days. And I make those things a priority. I notice better now when I'm getting a bit tired, stressed, anxious, angry, and I do something about it then. And it helps. I have a supportive team. I have a supportive manager. I have a decent amount of flexibility in my work. But I see that early on and I make those changes. Again, I have some stressful moments in my work that are just there. And I have lots of people saying I need this, this, and this. And I don't always prioritize well. And I do come home feeling stressed and tired, but I know that it's temporary. And I think about, okay, what am I doing for me in this time that's challenging? And looking forward to, okay, I know in 2 weeks, this is going to ease off. I need to make sure that I'm okay in the next 2 weeks, but I know that there is an end. And personal projects, traveling are really important to keep in mind. And, you know, traveling can be overseas. It can be to another state. It can be an hour drive away that you take with a friend, with a loved one. Sometimes a staycation where you're not working and you're ideally not doing uni work and you're doing whatever you want around the house. Maybe it's building that table that you've collected all the wood for and you've left it there. Maybe it's doing some DIY. Maybe it's doing some gardening, some journaling, some scrapbooking, collecting coins, whatever tickles your fancy. Make time for that. So that's all of our content that we have to cover together. I'm going to stop our recording now, so farewell to those listening later.